Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hello, hello, hello. Today, I'm going to bring you a recap of my live session from a couple nights ago. I want to give this recap because we had poor audio quality. I believe I've set it up right in that we're going to have great audio quality for today. But I want to say hello. I want to say welcome, welcome, welcome. And we are going to dig in. We are going to dig in. We are going to have a great session here. And this is Power Pack. There's a lot of information that's coming out of this session right here that will be a benefit to everybody who hears and who's on this meeting. Now, I want you to let me paint a picture for you. Now, we're talking about two doctors. They graduate from the same medical school, graduated the same year, had the same grades and the same training. Now, one of them opens a practice in a small town, does great work, helps every patient who walks in. But nobody outside of that town knows their name. The other doctor also does great work, but she writes a column in the local papers. She speaks at community events. She shows up on the morning news when flu season hits. She publishes a simple guide families can download. Same skill, same degree, same heart. But 5 years later, a mere 5 years later, one has a 6-month waiting list, and the other one is still wondering why the phone doesn't ring. Now, here's a question most people are afraid to ask. Is the second doctor actually better, or does she just look more trustworthy? And here's the harder question. Does it even matter? Because here's the truth that nobody tells you about business, about healthcare, about building something that lasts. The best person in the room doesn't always win. The most visible person does. Now, if you're sitting there right now, you're running your agency, caring for families, grinding every single day, and you feel like you're the best kept secret in your market, you're not alone. You're not failing. You're just invisible. And today we're going to change that. Now, I want to welcome you to this Home Care 7-Figure Blueprint community. I'm Mr. Smith, aka Professor Home Care. And today we're talking about something that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. Today we're talking about why authority matters in business and the difference between being good at what you do and the difference between being recognized for what you do. Now, by the end of this session, you're going to be able to understand exactly why visibility beats skill in the marketplace. And more importantly, what to do about it without compromising who you are. And that's important. Many owners don't know how to cross over from one side to the other. Now, before you think this is just opinion, let me show you the science behind why authority controls how people decide who to trust. Now, study number 1 is the Milgram obedience experiment. Back in 1963, a psychologist named Stanley Milgram at Yale ran one of the most famous experiments in history. He wanted to know how far will ordinary people go just because someone in a lab coat tells them to. Here's what happened. Volunteers were told to give electric shocks to another person every time that person got a quiz question wrong. The shocks weren't real, but the volunteers didn't know that. Every time the other person screamed, the volunteer looked at the man in the lab coat, and the man in the lab coat said, Please continue. Probably said it that way too. Please continue. 65% of them went all the way to maximum voltage. Not because they were cruel, because the person given the instructions appeared to be an authority. A lab coat and a clipboard were enough to override someone's own conscience. Now, here's why that matters for your business. When a family is choosing a home care provider for their mother with dementia, they don't have time to do a 6-month evaluation. They look for signals, credentials, confidence, visibility, recognition. They're not looking for the most qualified person. They're looking for the person who looks the most qualified. And if that's not you, it's going to be somebody else. Now, that's not manipulation. That's human wiring. Now, study number 2 was the halo effect. In 1920, back in 1920, you're talking about over 100 years ago now, a psychologist named Edward Thorndike studied how military officers rated their soldiers. And he found something that is wild. If an officer thought a soldier was tall and good looking, they also rated that soldier as more intelligent, more loyal, and a better leader. Even though height has absolutely nothing to do with intelligence, Thorndike called it the halo effect. When one positive impression bleeds into everything else. It's like walking into a restaurant that looks beautiful on the outside. Before you even taste the food, you already believe it's going to be good. Now, first impressions create a halo that covers everything. In business, your halo is your authority. If someone sees you on a podcast, reads your article, watches your video, hears you speak at a conference, they automatically assume you're better at what you do. Not because you proved it. Oh no, you haven't proved anything yet, but because you showed up. Perceived authority creates a halo that makes people trust your pricing, your process, and your promises before you ever shake their hand. And here's the flip side. If you're invisible, the halo goes to your competitor, even if they're not as good as you. And I'm willing to venture that most of the people who are on this call, your competitors aren't as good as you are. And if you stay with us, they won't be. Let me take a sip. Now, let me take this out of the lab and put it on the ground because I have lived this. When Bridget and I first started A Touch of Love Home Care, I had every certification you can get. Certified dementia care trainer, members of Connecticut Alzheimer's Disease Coalition. Over 20 years of healthcare experience between us. You know what happened? Crickets. The phone did not ring. And I remember thinking, what's wrong? We're qualified. We're good. Why isn't this working? I'm going to tell you why. And that's because qualifications live in a folder, but authority lives in public. Nobody can see my certifications from their living room. Nobody can feel my experience through a website that looked like every other agency's. I was the best kept secret in Connecticut. And guess what? Secrets don't pay the bills. The shift happened when I started making myself visible, not louder, visible. I started doing live sessions like this one. I started doing Facebook Lives. I started showing up at community events, not to sell, but to teach. I started sharing what I knew about dementia care, about aging, about what families actually go through, instead of waiting for them to find me. And here's what I learned from the clinical side of this business that most people miss. Families making healthcare decisions are the most overwhelmed people on the planet. They're Googling at 11 p.m. at night. They're asking friends at church. They're scrolling Facebook while sitting in a hospital waiting room. And in that moment, they don't have the bandwidth to research 15 agencies and compare credentials. They go with the name that they recognize, the face that they've seen, the voice that feels safe. Now, that's not shallow. That's called survival. When you're scared and exhausted, you go with what feels familiar. So I've stopped thinking of visibility as a self-promotion, and I started thinking of it as a service. I owe it to those families to be findable. I owe it to them to be the answer they stumble across at midnight when they're terrified. And if you're good at what you do, and I know most of you are, then staying hidden isn't humility, it's negligence. Because when you're invisible, the wrong people fill the gap. Authority isn't arrogance. Authority is a service. It's your obligation to be visible so the people who need you can actually find you. Don't deprive the people of finding you. Now, let's talk about the pillars of this whole process. And there are pillars here. And so, pillar one of being the authority is becoming the educator. Now, here's the number one mistake I see agency owners make. And that's they try to sell their way to authority. They post ads. They list their certifications like it's some sort of grocery list. Guess what? That doesn't work. Because nobody wakes up in the morning wanting to be sold to. Think about it like this. Imagine you go to a party. There's two people in the corner. The first one walks up and says, hey, I'm financial advisor. I manage $50 million in asset. Here's my card. The second person says, hey, I just read something interesting. Did you know that most families lose 30% of their inheritance to taxes just because they didn't plan right? I can show you how to avoid that. Same profession, but the second person just became the interesting person at the party. Why? Because they led with value and not credentials. That's what authority looks like. You don't tell people you're an expert. You show them by teaching. That's what I do in this community every single week. I don't get on here and say, I'm great, hire me. I teach. I share what I've learned from 20 years of experience in healthcare. And the trust builds naturally. When you teach, you give people a reason to listen. When you sell, you give them a reason to scroll past you. It's that simple. So I want you to make one commitment, right? I want you to say to yourself, but I want you to say it out loud. And I want you to say it word for word. I want you to say, this week, I'm going to create one piece of educational content, a short video, a social media post, or a live session. Just one. That one piece of material, that one piece of content, and have it teach families something useful about caring for their aging loved one. Right? So I want you to go back and let's take it from the top. I want us to say, matter of fact, if you're on this live session right now, I want you to say it together with me. And let's say it together. This week, I'm going to create one piece of educational content, a short video, a social media post, or a live session that teaches families something useful about caring for their aging loved one. I will not mention my services. I will only teach, and I will pay attention to how people respond. Pillar number 2, borrow authority until you build your own. Now, what does that mean? Well, some of you are thinking that's great, but I'm just starting out. Nobody knows who I am yet. And my answer is you borrow it. Think about it. When a teacher starts at a new school, nobody knows them yet. But on the first day, the principal walks into the classroom and says, "This is Mrs. Rodriguez. She's your new teacher." In that moment, the principal's authority transfers. The kids listen, not because they trust her yet, but because someone that they trust already vouched for her. That's borrowed authority. And it's the fastest way to build credibility from ground zero. Now, here's how it works in home care. Association. If a neurologist refers families to your agency, you just borrowed their authority. If a hospital discharge planner puts you on their list, you just borrowed the hospital's authority. That family doesn't know you yet, but they trust the doctor who sent them. Collaboration. Speak at a senior center. Guest on someone's podcast. Write a guest article. Every time you show up next to an established name, their credibility rubs off on you. Now, certification. Credentials are authority shortcuts. When I became a certified dementia care trainer, I didn't just learn more. I gave families a reason to trust me faster. That certification is borrowed authority from the Alzheimer's Association. Borrowing authority isn't a fake. Doctors hang diplomas on walls, lawyers display bar admissions. Those are all forms of borrowed authority from institutions that people already trust. You're not tricking anyone. You're giving them shorthand so they can make a faster decision. In healthcare, speed matters. Families can't wait 6 months to learn to trust you. Now, let's go with this one. I want you to make another commitment with me. Make another pledge, and we're going to make this one together, word for word. Follow me. All right, let's go. This week, I want you to say this with me now. This week, I'm going to identify 3 people in my community who already have the trust of my ideal clients. A doctor, a social worker, a pastor, a senior center director. I'm going to reach out to one of them and offer to be a resource. Not sell, just serve. I'm planting the seed for borrowed authority. All right. Now, pillar number 3. This is the one that trips up most good-hearted people. Because we're taught that bragging is bad. And guess what? It is. But sharing results is not bragging, it's evidence. Now, let me give you the difference. Bragging sounds like we're the best agency in Connecticut. Evidence sounds like last year, 94% of our families renewed their care plans with us. Here's what one daughter said about how we helped her mother. One is a claim, the other is a receipt. Think of it like a courtroom. A lawyer doesn't walk in and say, "My client is innocent, trust me." They present evidence, witnesses, documents, a timeline of facts. Your testimony, your reviews, your outcomes, those are your evidence. Now, here's what making your proof public looks like. Google reviews. Ask every satisfied family to leave one. Not because you need a good rating, but because the next family searching at midnight needs to see someone else's mother was safe with you. Video testimonials. A 60-second video of a daughter saying they took care of my mom like she was their own. That's more powerful than any ad you could ever run. Case studies. The story arc, where the family started, what was hard, what changed, where they are now. People connect with journeys, not statistics. Public milestones. We just served our 500th family. We've been in business for 20 years. These aren't boasts, they're confidence signals. From a clinical perspective, when families are making healthcare decisions, they need proof. They're not being picky, they're being protective. They're trusting you with the most important person in the world. So when you share evidence of your quality, you're not being arrogant. You're giving a scared family permission to stop searching and start trusting. Now, let's make another pledge together one more time. One more. And let's say this week, I'm going to ask 2 current client families if they'd be willing to share a brief testimonial, written or on video. I'm going to make it easy by giving them a simple prompt. What was your biggest concern before you hired us? How do you feel now? Then I'm going to share at least one of them publicly. Now, this is good. You got your pledges going. You know what to do. Now let me bring this home. We talked about the science, how the Milgram experience proved that people follow whoever looks like the authority. How the halo effect means one positive impression can change everything. We talked about the 3 pillars: teach instead of sell, borrow authority while you build your own, and make your proof public. But here's what I really want you to take away from today. Authority is not about ego, it's about impact. Every family you don't reach because they didn't know you existed, that's a family that might end up with the wrong provider, with a provider who doesn't care as much as you do. Every caregiver you can't hire because your agency looks invisible, that's talent going to your competitor because they showed up and you didn't. When you stay hidden, the wrong people fill the gap. So this isn't about vanity. You know what this is about? This is about legacy. What's the story your community would tell about you 20 years from now? Are they going to say they were great, but nobody ever heard of them? Or are they going to say that person changed how our entire town thinks about aging? The great news is you get to decide, but only if you're willing to step out of the shadows and into the spotlight. And I promise you, you can do that without losing who you are. You can be visible and humble, confident and kind, authoritative and authentic. That's what I try to model every single week in this community. Not perfect, just present. The families who need you most, they deserve to find you. Don't let modesty rob them of the best care available. Now, if today's session opened your eyes and you're serious about building a real business, not just a job with your name on it, make sure you're plugged into the Home Care 7-Figure Blueprint community. This is where we go deeper every single week. And if you're a home care agency owner who's ready to stop being your market's best kept secret, if you want the systems, the templates, and the step-by-step playbook to build a 7-figure agency, drop Blueprint in the comments or send me a DM and I'll show you what's inside the Home Care 7-Figure Blueprint community. Remember, the world doesn't reward the best, it rewards the best who are seen. So go be seen this week. Your community is waiting for you. I'm Mr. Smith, aka Professor Home Care. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye for now.